Hello and welcome to Taking to School with Dr. Tom Prichard. I am your host, JP John Paz from the two-man power trip of wrestling. And of course, joining me is the star of the show, the former WWE World Tag Team Champion, 8-time Smoke Mountain Wrestling Tag Team Champion, one of the greatest trainers ever in the history of the business, the Doctor of Desire himself, Dr. Tom Prichard. Dr. Tom, how you doing today, sir?
John, I'm doing great today. Do I look a little dark in this picture though? Because it just kind of I made it bigger, and I was looking at this shot, and I'm thinking I kind of dig the ambiance, but I'm not sure if it looks good on your side.
Oh, it looks good. I like it. It does.
Outstanding.
It does
There's
look
the keeper.
kind of dark and devious.
Good deal. I
Maybe.
like dark and devious, as you
Yeah.
well know. So okay,
Yeah.
great. San Antonio. Boo.
Yes, Spurs, baby.
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar. So
They
anyway,
just made the playoffs somehow, even though they're 13 games under 500.
yeah, they're my least favorite baseball team.
Baseball? What
I
the hell?
follow. Yeah, I know Corporal Robinson and all that. That's when I was
The Admiral,
most of
David
those guys.
Robinson.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Dennis, and those fellows. First name basis. The Rodman fella. He played for those guys for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he sure did. So anyway, hook 'em horns. Love you Spurs. Not really, but I mean San Antonio. Just it's one of those places I'd rather not ever step foot in again.
Really? It's such a nice town. I was down there a couple years ago. I love it.
To each his own, John. I'm just saying. I don't ever want to step in San Antonio again.
Oh. And I
So
had a
there you
good,
go.
when I was down there, I had a good tour guide. He took me to a nice steak restaurant. You probably heard of the guy,
Who's this?
Tully Blanchard.
Jose Lothario. Well,
Yeah.
actually, yeah, Tully I like Tully. We went out and eat. We did a seminar with Rudy Gonzalez a couple years ago. Went out and had dinner and talked. And uh, man, my respect even my respect for Tully was never ending before, but it just up the level when we did that seminar. Just showed me a different side of him.
What's up, Fred Palmer? How you doing, Fred? Nice.
Fred, how are you?
Nice.
So that's kind
So,
of cool. You know what? I got to say, that's kind of cool having people be able to talk to us live.
yeah, it is kind of a change. I like it. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
So we were kind of talking a little bit off air. I was saying that like who are the big stars nowadays? What are they doing? So I was just looking into some metrics and stuff and like YouTube views, Google trends, who searched the most. Man, Roman Reigns and who's the number one merch seller. Roman Reigns, man, he is a star, and I know he's a former pupil of yours. Gotta love the success of Roman Reigns.
I do love the success of Roman Reigns, man. He earned it. He deserves it. But he went out and he really paid his dues. He busted his butt over and over and over. And gosh, you got to think about it. Even going through cancer, not knowing just how serious it can be because it's one of those things. Cancer's not a death sentence anymore, but at the same time, it's so unpredictable. So he's been through the ups and downs, and uh, he really is one of those guys who you can't say it was just handed to him. He went out and he got it. So good for Roman Reigns.
Pretty crazy to think that he may be closer to passing John Cena than not right now. Like as far as just popularity and what he's been able to do, Cena almost took fans kind of like away from the business when he started his getting pushed. A lot of people had a pullback. They didn't want to go to PG. So it's interesting. It's a lot closer than people think. He has more main events at WrestleMania than Cena.
Well, I think that when you have a package like a Roman Reigns, the Usos, and Paul Heyman, I mean the optics alone just draws you in. It draws me in. And Paul Heyman, I think, is still one of the most brilliant managers out there today. He's got great verbiage. He's got a great feel for everything he does, and it's authentic. And he's one of those guys that generates heat wherever he goes. And again, being paired up with Roman Reigns, that couldn't hurt either one of them.
Paul Heyman, a buddy of yours, right? You and Bruce buddies with him, or were buddies with him.
Well, no, I'm still buddies with Paul Heyman. We don't talk every day, obviously, but I still admire Paul. I still like Paul. Good man. Well, wait a minute. Let me take that back. He's a bad man, which is a good thing.
Yes. Wes
Yes.
Smith. Hey, y'all. Hey, Wes. How you doing?
Hey, man, weren't you at the Oscars? No, that was the other guy. Okay. That was Will. Sorry.
Brandon says, make sure you all come to Salisbury Sunday, May 22nd. What the heck is that? Salisbury
I
Sunday.
have no idea, but
I thought you might know what that is.
well, it looks like Salisbury Steak Sunday, maybe May
That wouldn't be
22nd.
bad. 2 to
Yeah,
6.
May 22nd. I'm actually busy.
Oh, I wonder where that is. Salisbury Sunday. It could be Salisbury, Maryland.
Could be. Well, you'll have to find that out because that's on the East Coast, and I'm staying right here unless I'm needed somewhere else.
Oh no, it's a wrestling event. Salisbury, North Carolina. All right.
Oh, North Carolina. Well, I'll be at a wrestling event in Woodbury. Hold on. Woodbury. No. Let me look this up since we're talking about the 22nd, because I will be somewhere on the 22nd. I'll be somewhere on the 21st too. Hold on here. Oh, right. It'll be Woodbury, Tennessee at 2:00. That's Central Standard Time. I'm in Ringgold, Georgia, May 21st. Right before that, so 2 shots and
Nice.
2 surprises happening that night, I think. So yeah, I'm booked. Otherwise, I'd be there. So
nice. Oh, all right. It was worth a shot though from Brandon.
hey, good shot. Good shot taken. Yeah.
So another guy that I was just looking at some metrics and stuff, Cody Rhodes, his T-shirt has sold out. He sold some tickets when they announced him versus The Miz for Monday night. You know, they sold a couple thousand extra tickets. It's crazy. And then I saw his song just on Spotify alone in 2022, 1 million downloads. So
how about
Cody
that?
Rhodes, do you think Cody may be more popular than maybe AEW? Maybe we realized.
Well, I certainly think he's more popular now than he was in AEW, but that was once again one of those things where people knew it, but they weren't sure until it happened. And then when it happened, just again, the optics and the implications of taking one of the rival, wrestling promotions vice presidents and bringing them back for the biggest event of the year. Pretty good coup on Vince and WWE's part, no doubt. So I think, again, coming from a reality and an authentic standpoint, you don't have a better story right now than Cody Rhodes. He's a guy who has now been vindicated, or is about to be vindicated in his eyes, to go out and prove that he's worthy, and not just having a main event, but he's worthy of holding the title. So he's made it clear what he's after. He's made it clear what his intents are. So fantastic. More power. I really do enjoy when stories like that happen, because you can't plan that. That has to happen organically, and it has to come to you at the right place at the right time. And I think WrestleMania this year was a perfect time, because obviously everything you read on the internet, which doesn't mean anything, but to some people it means everything, and even just talk of the town, Cody wasn't very well received, wasn't very well liked. And now when you come back, and I don't know if it was under what circumstances exactly, but he comes back to the opposition he left, broke the crown of one of their major stars and office employees at the same time, and comes back and gets thrown in the spotlight. So we'll see if it shines too bright, or if he's getting just the right amount of light to bask in this time. So I think it'd be fun.
Rob Jones is giving the fist, which you gotta love that.
Very nice.
Brandon said, who is capable of beating Roman Reigns? That's a good point. I know The Rock is supposedly coming in. I don't think he'll beat him, but obviously that's a huge, huge, huge WrestleMania main event and a marquee matchup. Who's going to beat Roman? I can't see anybody.
Well,
years.
I mean, it's going to take something special and someone special. And Brock Lesnar obviously didn't do it. So this sets up next year's WrestleMania, regardless of when they announce it, who they announce it with. I mean, the great thing about it is there's something to talk about now, and there's some real scenarios that could go down between now and WrestleMania, and just wonder how creative and appealing it'll be when it's finally laid out. But it's going to be very cool either way.
Bo Fantazo says brother versus brother love match. Book it. I'll be there. Wow,
Well,
imagine that.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Bo. If you give me, we'll talk with the guaranteed payoff for that. And I I'm really not that interested unless you got what I'm looking for, or if you're cooking what I'm or smelling what I'm cooking, something like that. No, is what I'm saying. Actually, I don't want to get in the ring. Neither does he.
So he says, so you think Roman's going to keep the title for another year? I say yes, probably. I can't see him
Well,
losing.
I'm not saying that he would hold it consecutively through the year. There is a chance, but it wouldn't make sense. Keep him undefeated. Make everybody else cook them up as well. Get them ready for the next thing, or get them ready for things along the way to build the storyline, build whatever they have to build. But you never know. I mean, you're right. I would keep it on him. If it is going to be Rock and Roman next year, I'd keep it on him actually, regardless, until somebody comes along that really generates the heat to prove he can't.
And they keep mentioning Bruno, Pedro Morales, Bob Backlund, and Hulk Hogan every time he comes out. Those are the guys with the longer title runs than him. Each guy held it for over 1,000. Bruno, we're looking at 2,000. Obviously, Pedro Morales, I think, was like 1,500. Was a lot. I mean,
Right.
you were talking about many, many days as champion. And they keep mentioning that. So I feel like that's got to mean something that, like Michael Cole's like beating that into your head. He goes, the next guy is Hulk Hogan on the list to catch,
Right.
and he's at 1,000. So it's weird that he keeps saying that as long as Roman stays healthy, obviously.
Well, that used to be a common thing back then when they would talk about the title reigns and talk about how many days and how long this guy held the championship. Different business, different culture, but I think it's very, very cool because they used to not want to mention WWE, especially didn't want to mention who came before these guys. It was Hogan for a long time. So they weren't bringing up the past and the history, but now it seems to be it's okay to do that. I'm glad they are because it would behoove a lot of the guys trying to get in the business today, even though, yes, I know what the requirements are. They want athletes and they don't necessarily want you to know anything about wrestling. But Muhammad Ali looked up old boxing moves and had heroes when he came up. So did Tyson. So did a lot of other boxers and football players, baseball players. You study the guys who came before you because you might learn something. So with all these names being mentioned, it might encourage somebody to look up those names and see why they're talking about these guys. And that to me is a huge part of really what's missing today is nobody really cares to investigate the past, not just for the love of the game, but even just to learn, even to study the history and find out why these guys were so over. I do repeat, different culture, different eras, different people. But the recipe is still the same. It's charisma and connection with the fans. And you can look at the guys who've come in the last 20 or even 10 years. But if you go back and look at how the foundation was laid with a guy like Bruno, especially with WWF, man, the magic he had, the charisma he had when he came to the ring, there was something special about him, and you knew it. Same thing with Pedro Morales. Everybody knew Pedro was the guy picked, because he was drawing the fans in New York. He was drawing the fans all around. And what was it that he had? I mean, it wasn't just that he was a Puerto Rican champion. That there was a lot more to it than that. But that was an element of it. Bruno Sammartino from, Broza, Italy. I mean, that meant something back then because of the world we lived in. And it means something today when you got a guy like Roman Reigns in the world we live in now, who is your champion because he radiates being a champion. He radiates that star quality that you can't put your finger on, but you know it when you're around it and you feel the energy. So all the guys, you're right, from Bruno, Hogan, Pedro, no, I was going to say Staceyak, but that was 5 weeks, I think, or maybe 2 weeks.
No, yeah, I was going to say, I think it was only like 10 days
2
or
weeks,
14
10
days.
days,
So, yeah,
yeah.
it was a very short run.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. It was those special guys that got the title, and now I'm glad they're mentioning mentioning those guys in terms of history wise and adding it to the commentary today.
Says, I hope The Rock can come by SummerSlam. And then a good question here from Jeremy Luckhart. Who could you see as the next breakthrough talent for the main event outside of Cody Rhodes?
Oh wow. Braun what's his name? Breaker?
Braun Breaker, yeah.
Yeah.
First name I thought of too, yeah. Rick
Okay.
Steiner's son.
Yeah, I mean he's just got he's got all the touches you need to be a main event star, except the experience. All he needs to do is get his sea legs under him and get some of that ring time and feeling it. That takes some time, but I think he's certainly ahead of the curve, and he's had some great teachers, and he's had some great experiences along through his life by watching his dad and his uncle go out there and compete. So just give him some miles and give him some reps. He'll be fine.
Yeah, I feel like he's like can't miss. Like when Lesnar came up in 02, that same like vibe. Like you can't screw this guy up. Like he's just somebody already to me.
Yeah, he is. He is. I thought he had poise. I thought he spoke well, and I definitely think he's going to be a big player.
A little bit of a combination of Scotty and Rick. Braun Breaker, I think.
That's scary.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Remember those guys? Yeah, you
I've heard of them. Yeah, once or twice. Yeah.
Were they ever stiff or snug? Because I always hear from the guys that they really weren't, but they looked like they were killing people.
No, they weren't. They were great. They were pros, and that was, that was the other thing. We didn't know them. Jimmy and I didn't know them. Of course, Cornette knew them, but we'd cross paths in the middle of the night or something like that, through here and there. But when we first started, we're going to work on them at SummerSlam. We did an angle. We jumped them, I think, beforehand and all that stuff. And so then they wanted to rib us back in the back. And Jimmy already knew the story, so he didn't put it over. And we just kind of went, nah. And went out and had a good match. No, they were never stiff with us. They're always pros.
Yes, Jacob putting over my Spurs shirt. Nice. Fan since 1988, since the Admiral was a rookie. I've been a fan of the
Hey,
Spurs.
Jacob, all my exes live in Texas. That's why I hang my hat in Tennessee. That's the only thing.
Dumb question from Juan Vela. There are no dumb questions, maybe dumb answers, but here we go.
Yeah.
we covered this one. We covered this one last week. Are you a real doctor? You just play one on TV. Obviously, not a real doctor. We went through that whole story, which was great, which I love, with Sherry Martel and Ricky Morton and a bunch of the other guys. So that's good. And then it says, I know Brother Love wasn't a televangelist. He was just a man of love, which you can attest to.
Of course, he was a man of love. He spread love and joy wherever he well, not necessarily joy, but he spread love wherever he went.
Great heel. Great heel.
You ain't kidding.
I'll leave that one alone. But WWE from RB, WWE and AE rosters are too big. Remember when fans knew all the wrestlers' personality styles and all the storylines going up and down the card? Yes, I do. I was actually talking to a friend of mine the other day when Greg Valentine feuded with Ronnie Garvin, random mid-card feud in 1989.
Right.
We loved it. We were all over it. It was good storytelling. Ronnie Garvin gets retired, becomes a referee. They got the Hammer Jammer. I mean, they had all this other stuff involved, but we knew up and down. Now forget about it, especially AEW. 100 guys and only 3 hours of TV a week.
But once again, I mean, different time and different place. You had a weekly card, a weekly event, and even when it started getting bigger, I mean, I know you still knew everybody on the roster, but I think it's just a matter of it's turned into a corporate business, a corporate identified business. Anyway, it used to be wrestling, it used to be professional wrestling. Now it's sports entertainment, and it's dignified, and it's more business than it ever was. It was always a business, and the guys who made big money in it were the promoters that drew big houses and ran big arenas and stuff like that. And you need that. I guess you need to have a reserve these days. I don't know why, but I guess you need it in case somebody gets hurt. But you knew the wrestlers' personalities because they were a bit of themselves, and they understood how to get that over. And I think it was more authentic as well. You have some authentic people out there today, but like a Roman Reigns, who's authentically a badass. Paul Heyman is authentically Paul Heyman. That's him, morning, noon, and night. And so, yeah, I remember all that stuff too, John, with personalities and styles, and you knew how they were when they were going to go out. But the world's changed, and everything changes with it, I guess. So I wish it could be back the way it was, but unfortunately, it can't. So there.
Chris Vick said he refereed a show in 2005 or 2006 with Nightmare Ted Allen was on the show. It was in Alabama, and he was the ref for Dr. Tom yourself versus Brad Armstrong. His name is Ref Spanky. It was a damn honor, and he went to Brad Armstrong's funeral as well.
Very cool. I remember that match. I sure do. So yeah, and I was it was a nice town. Ted Allen, I miss Ted Allen too. He was a hell of a worker. He had that attitude of let's just do it right or don't do it at all type thing. So yes, Spanky, good to hear from you. Glad you found this place.
Yeah, look at that. Thank you, Chris Vick, a.k.a. Spanky. From Junior, was Ricky Steamboat the real deal? I have a sneaking suspicion, yes.
Yeah, Ricky was the real deal. That was him. And he was absolutely the real deal. He was sure authentic. Definitely.
We need more big men in wrestling from Bob. I tend to agree with that one.
I agree with that as well. I'm not a big guy by any stretch of the imaginations, but I'll tell you, I really do agree that the guys like the Blackjack Mulligans of the world, the John Studds, the DiBiase, Teddy was a big guy, no doubt. He was intimidating.
6'6", yeah.
Yeah. So, I agree. The Murdochs, Dusty Rhodes, the guys who looked like they could kick somebody's ass outside the ring as well as inside. So I agree. We sure do need the big guys to come back. And Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Ernie Ladd, guys like that, really loved the business and they were great at it. So that I think you have some big guys coming into it and it might be good at it. But to be great at it, I think you really have to love it and have a passion for it and have that camaraderie that was back then as well. These days, it's different. That's what I'll say.
Speaking of different, Jeremy comes back again and says, what are your thoughts on the revival, a.k.a. FTR? Do they throw off the old school vibes to you?
Oh, by all means. I think they're one of the greatest teams in the business. And I know people will disagree with me because they have. But these guys do know how to tell a story and go out and once again, they grew up in the Carolinas, so they had the Midnight and Rock and Roll Express to watch, and that's who they patterned a lot of their stuff after. In fact, 99% of their stuff is after Midnight and Rock and Roll. So yeah, I think they're tremendous team, tremendous guys outside the ring.
I'd like to meet who said that they aren't great, right? Who the hell would that be? Are they nuts? They're the best. They're probably the best tag team in years.
Yeah. And I had that debate. I had that discussion.
Wow.
Like, okay, so let me lay this out to you because the argument was they weren't doing the flippy stuff. The argument was they were boring, and the argument was they couldn't do all this other crap. I said, well, let me explain this to you right here. Watch the transition, and it was a match where they were flawless in what they did, and it was great. It was a great transition between Dax and Dash, but I don't remember who was in the ring legally. But they made it and came in and then came out, and behind the referee's back, there was no wasted time, no wasted movement. Just a technical little small fact that these people weren't looking at. And I showed them this, and it was just a matter of taste. They don't want that kind of wrestling. You can make that style interesting and entertaining if you know how to do it correctly. And these guys do. So anyway, that was I think the issue they just had. They weren't doing the kicks, super kicks, or 450 Coronas or toupees. That was a problem.
Wow, those people are nuts. They're the best in ring psychology, everything. They're the best.
I think so. Yeah,
they just had two matches last week that were completely different from each other, and great. Them versus the Briscoes on Supercard of Honor for Ring of Honor, and then on All Elite Wrestling in the main event versus the Young Bucks. Great match. Completely different, but
Right.
what's the common denominator? FTR is the best.
Well, let me just put a little footnote here too. I think the Briscoes
Oh, they're
are a
number two,
talented
I'd
team.
say.
Yeah, and they came in for a tryout many years ago. Shit, more than 10 years ago. Obviously, maybe 15 years ago. And I thought they were fantastic, and I don't know why they never got hired, unless they just didn't look the part for the guys who were looking for their tag team. But yeah, I thought those guys. I've always been a fan of the Briscoes too since I first saw them.
I always say FTR Briscoes are the best two.
Oh
FTR is
yeah,
probably number one, but yeah,
yeah, I'd go on board with that.
you gotta love them. Dr. Tom, who came up with the Texas versus Tennessee storyline in World Class USWA? Also, what happened to guys like Steve Dane, Billy Travis, Rod Price, and Bull Payne?
Wow, that was Eric Embry's deal, and I think he did that pretty much every time he came to book Memphis, and he was the booker at that time for sure. But oh man, okay, sorry, I'm anyway. So that was Eric, and I was on commentary in Dallas at the Sportatorium one time, and Eric was saying he was from Texas, and I said he's really from Kentucky, and then he said, "Yeah, wanted to put me on his team because he knew if I went out there and buried him on commentary, it wouldn't work for him." But Stephen Dane, I have no idea. Billy Travis passed away years ago. Bull Payne, I'm not sure. Rod Price, I think, is still around. I see pictures occasionally of him. But that time period, especially with Texas versus Tennessee, when we still had the Sportatorium in Dallas to go to, we would take a tour bus on Thursday night after the spot show and they would drive us all the way to Dallas, get out. The baby faces would go to the gym. The heels would hang out and work that night. Some of us stayed over and worked the weekend in Texas, and everybody else came back. And but yeah, that was a lot of fun, actually. I know you just asked who came up with it, but just to let you know, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Eric Embry definitely came up with it. But just talked to Rod Price not that long ago. He's doing good. He actually had his house, I think it was in New Orleans, had his house flooded. This was, I think, a month ago or so. It was like horrible conditions down there. We were able to rebuild it. They got, they're on the path forward. But yeah, he was had a rough patch there, but he's doing very good.
Yeah, well, he's resilient. So yeah, but anyway, that was good.
Yeah, good stuff. You know who you mentioned before? You mentioned Stan the Man Staceyak, one of the greatest transitional champions of all time. Just WWF lore. I used to love that. Like Ivan Koloff was awesome. Iron Sheik, Staceyak, like those transitional champs. They're great and definitely kind of missed in really today's era. They don't really do that too much anymore. Maybe Miz a few years ago when he kind of transitioned from one guy to another, but they don't really do that. But I wanted to ask you about his son because you had a hand in training Sean Staceyak. When did you first meet Sean Staceyak? Was it Funkin' Dojo?
Yes, it was a Funkin' Dojo. And I met Sean. He, gosh, I think I met him at the studio. He needed directions and called me, or I don't remember. I met him the first time was at the studio. He's wearing a do-rag and looked great, fantastic. And I thought this guy's going to be a gold mine. He's going to be fantastic. He's going to be great. And he was. He had talent. I think he just needed to be around some good mentors and people who really wanted to help him. And that was, I think, designated to be me at one time. And I did what I could do, but I was falling short myself back then. And Sean went on the road, and it could be daunting sometimes. It could be kind of intimidating, and it can be, if you're not used to the wrestling business, and I don't believe Sean was at that time. He grew up in a wrestling family, but his dad was Stan the Man Staceyak, and with that carried a lot of extra baggage. And Sean was a nice enough guy and would come in and really want to be trusting and trustworthy and all gung ho about learning professional wrestling. And then, sometimes you get on the road and guys start talking to you, or guys start doing whatever was going on back then, and you can get lost. And I think that's what happened. I mean, I think Sean kind of overthought things sometimes, and while he had the talent, a lot of times it's easy to get in over your head and just be lost with everything going on.
Staceyak, I thought it was 10, and now only 9 days. Says
9
RB.
days.
And obviously, Ivan Cole is very, very short transitional run to taking it from Bruno and giving it to Pedro Morales.
Yeah. So I mean, who did Staceyak beat? Staceyak
Pedro
beat
Morales.
No, Staceyak tape. Okay.
And then Bruno beat Staceyak to win it back,
That's
and then Superstar Billy Graham beat Bruno.
Yeah, the Superstar was the first heel WWF champion. Okay, cool.
To get like a significant run that wasn't a transitional run, yeah.
Right.
That wasn't like short and sweet. I mean, 9-10 days is nothing, really,
Right. But you know what? It's 9 or 10 days I haven't held it. So.
Right. And he lives in lore forever. I mean,
and it's like Tommy Rich, we did Tommy, and all of a sudden, he said, "Yeah, what? It's 5 more days and you held it, ain't it?" So, yeah, good point. Yeah, so
yep.
Yeah.
I'll get back to Staceyak in a second here, but the good question here from Alex: how hard was it to watch your diet and stick to a regular workout routine when you're in the business?
if you ever watch me work, it wasn't that hard at all because I didn't have one, and I was working out when I could. I mean, that was on me. So but I've seen guys who do pay the price, and you have to. Bob Holly wouldn't eat airline food at all.
Wow.
Did we just black out?
Nope, good.
Okay. The guys who were serious about it were serious about it, but I would work out when I could and do what I could, but I wasn't, quite honestly, I wasn't that disciplined back then. So.
You weren't in great shape, you're saying?
No. I said
cardio-wise, were you back then?
Did you say I wasn't in great shape?
No, I say, were you saying you weren't in great shape?
Well, no, I could have been in a lot better shape, and I knew what I had to do. I just wasn't doing it. I should have been, I could have been, but should have, would have, could have never get you anywhere. Except you got me here in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah. Look at Bob, says they need to bring back the jobbers. You agree with that?
Well, I think that might be a little for a 3-hour show. You can't have a whole show full of squash matches and one-sided events. Not the way it works these days. It's a TV business more so than not. And before, it was an hour on TV in the afternoon or morning or whatever, at night. And you could do that because you're building the guys for the main event next week. But this, when you have a major TV contract, you have to give them, obviously, top-notch matches with top-notch stars. People don't want to watch a bunch of has-been, would-be's, never-will-be's, and stuff like that on TV. They want to see stars. So, I mean, there's a place and a time for it, but I don't think we need a lot of squash matches today.
He says, did Staceyak die in the ring? Not as far as I know. I thought, didn't he have a heart attack or something?
I think Stan had a heart attack in Oregon. Yeah. He was doing some commentary for Don Owen, and when I was there, that's when I really got to know him. I watched him as a kid in Houston, and one of the greatest angles, and it reminded me when Staceyak brought a anatomy chart on the promos and would talk about how he would hit here on the heart, and it would cause the left ventricle to close the blood clot in the left vernum snape, and then the right vernum would react to it. And he would go into this line of words that nobody knew what he was talking about, but it sounded, incredulous anyway. And then he's talking about people wanting to ban the heart punch, and he's on a promo, and Nick Kozak comes out and says that should be banned. That should be banned. And Staceyak hits Kozak in the heart, and then he says, I do it. I hit above the belt. I hit right here. And he keeps crossing his heart. And Johnny Valentine is slowly waking up and he goes, I hit above the belt right here. And he's pointing to it, And Valentine looks, and then suddenly Valentine delivers the heart punch to Staceyak, and Staceyak sells it. And Johnny goes, it works. And now it's going to be the battle of the master of the heart punch versus Johnny Valentine, who knows how to get it. And he just saw him level him, so simple storylines back then that you could get away with and believe that somebody could hit you there in the heart and it would, like de-circuit your body, I guess. Ox Baker happened to be in the ring with two guys that died in the dressing room, but they said it was because of the heart punch. Of course, Ray Gunkel died, probably because he was eating too much fat. And then Enrique Torres, I think, died after working with Ox. So Ox would always use that on the publicity coming in. She's killed two people, and Stasiak's injured so many wrestlers, put him out of the business and stuff like that. So Stasiak was he had a great reputation as a heel. So
Yeah,
he's a big guy.
So was Sean. Sean was a big dude, muscular.
Yes.
Seems like that WWE kind of guy that they would love. And obviously, you wrestled him a bunch because we talked about it in the Power Pro episode a few weeks ago. Like, you guys went down there, you would wrestle him, had a little bit of a mini feud. You know what I mean? Like, so they saw a lot of potential in him.
Sure, but once again, man, and I say this all the time: what we do in the ring is really that much of what the business is,
right?
And the head games and everything else is outside the ring, and we all fall for it at one time or another, and until you have to shake it off and say, wait a minute, hold on here, stop piling this crap on, and let's just get right down to what we really need to get down to. And I think the bottom line is just understanding how to mix through the muck and the mud that you travel down in your career. So you have to enjoy the journey along the way, and sometimes that journey finds you washed up on shore of a deserted island, and you're looking for somebody to be an ally, and there's nobody around, and you're out there fending for yourself. In any kind of corporation, you need allies, and especially in wrestling, and especially up there at that time, you had to have somebody who saw something in you, and sometimes that meant the champion, the agent on call or on duty, or just the boys, looking around and talking and doing whatever they were doing. And I think Sean didn't really want to play that game. So that could have been it. And I know Sean's going to listen to this. I love Sean. I do. But, it is a game. And I hated dealing with it too. But you have to deal with it when you be in this stuff. So.
Stan the Man. Perfect tough guy persona. Yes.
I'd agree. I would certainly agree. He looked the part. And when you would talk to him as a heel, he could be the part, but he can also know how to be a nice guy. But he came from that time and era where you had to be a tough guy, and the guys were traveling the roads, and they had to have protection from the fans back then. These days, I don't know if there's any real sustained heat, but back then there was, and he was a heel during that time when people were being stabbed and tires flattened and windows broken and stuff like that. So you had to be tough back then. Yep. He definitely was.
What is missing from today's wrestling as far as getting heat? Do you think that's missing?
It's certainly missing. Too many people's feelings get hurt. You sure as hell can't do today what was done back then. Some of the things that was said, some of the things that was done. Nobody wants to get color anymore because it's barbaric, but it added to the drama.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to do things that go right up to the line and then cross it, because that's not what we do in polite society these days. But yet everybody is going out of their minds these days. I just think everybody's been conditioned that it's all a show, and told nobody really hates each other. You got social media where anybody can read anything, anybody can hear anything. Everybody goes online thanking each other for what a wonderful match we had and talking like it's all big showbiz. And I'm not saying you have to go out and say that everything we do is legitimately we hate each other and things like this. But when you have a guy like Brock Lesnar who looks like a guy who really doesn't like people coming out smoking and joking now and having babyface, he's still a badass and he still projects that. But to get really real heat these days, I don't know what you have to do. Back then it was a little simpler because people were willing to buy in a little quicker and get caught up in the moment. Even if it's with another fan in the audience rooting for the good guy, you're rooting for the heel. Real heat has to come from within. It has to be authentic, and there's not too many guys, if anybody, besides a guy like Lesnar, Paul Heyman, or Roman Reigns, who actually know how to project that.
From LC, do you feel that this is still the PG era? Like you said, everyone is buddies with each other. No real animosity going on, it seems like.
Do I feel this? Yeah, it's certainly a PG era. You have all the networks. Look, it is about making money, no doubt. And Vince has made money, and that's his job for a publicly traded company. And he needs to please everybody. And you have to be careful, and you got to watch what you do and watch what you say. People don't want to see grown men go out there and cut themselves anymore, or even if there's blood, you have to stop the match because we're worried about the contestants' health. That is so much more civilized, and it's so much more healthier for the guys and gals involved. No doubt. And I'll probably get heat for this, and I'm at this point in my life right now, I just don't care. I don't. I mean, the thing is, I do come from that era where you use blood, and it did draw sometimes, most of the time. But you had guys like Abdullah the Butcher, or the Sheik, or Terry Funk and Harley Race, Jose Lothario, the great Malenko, guys who would go out and bleed buckets and add to the drama and the frenzy and the energy and the electricity in the building. It was far from PG. It was maybe R, wasn't X, but it was maybe R because they did show some violence, and that was what wrestling was these days. But it started many, many years before this, in the mid 80s, when Vince was really taking over. And everybody had become more sophisticated. So not saying it was wrong because it drew a lot of money and those guys did well. But as far as the style goes and just as far as preference, if you have guys who know how to do it great, which you don't anymore, then it works. So these days, if you use it sparingly and you use it with great care, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes getting busted open is a good thing. So.
How big of a star could Gino Hernandez have been with Vince McMahon and the Machine pushing him? Could he have been on the heel level of a Macho Man Randy Savage or a $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase?
I certainly believe in my heart that Gino had the talent and he had the business sense to either get over or leave, because if you don't get over and you stay, then you're really done. But I think he certainly could have been a star in New York, but I don't know how Gino would handle the responsibility. He handled it great in Texas because he was home. He was great friends with Von Erichs, and he knew what to do. He knew how to get heat. But I think WWE is a whole different animal. Not saying he couldn't. I would think he could, but I have a tinge of doubt in me because I also know Gino was a rebel, and Gino was a great businessman, no doubt, but he'd only been dealing with people he had known for a while. And don't know if that would have made a difference with Vince. He could have been the $1 million man. That was Gino. I mean, he was a heavy guy, but I think he would have been a star no matter what. He might have been in the Kerry Von Erich spot. Don't know.
Should promos be fully scripted, or should they have bullet points and allow talents to somewhat be themselves?
Well, if talent knows how to be themselves and knows how to talk, by all means. I've never been a fan of scripted promos. You have to have bullet points, but when you're trying to remember a script, more so than not, you sound like you're trying to remember a script and you're trying to remember words. So if you give somebody bullet points and knows how to be entertaining and knows how to grab it and run with it, I'm all for that. But again, I don't have faith in a lot of the guys today that know how to do that. You need to learn how to. You need to know how to talk about anything at any time. That takes years. So no, I really don't think they should be fully scripted at all.
Donnie says kayfabe was an art in itself.
It was an art. No,
Yeah.
it was, and Terry Funk was one of the best at it. Dusty Rhodes was one of the best at it. Abdullah the Butcher and the Sheik. I just mentioned them a while ago. What kayfabe meant is they never let anybody in on what they were doing. It was between only the ones who needed to know, and sometimes even they were kayfabe. So yeah, I agree. That was an art in itself, and guys took pride in it. Guys respected it, even though it was hokey as hell sometimes. I mean, the guys still respected it, and that to me, that was part of the biggest fun you were having. It was a business that kind of like running away, joining the circus. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But once again, I don't wear a suit and tie every day. I want to run away with the circus. I want to run and have fun and do all these things. Is that a responsible adult? No, I really doubt it. But I'm not gonna sit here and say, man, I regret too much already. I don't. I mean, I regret enough, but I've got to the point in my life where some people get it, some people don't. And I'm not worried about those who don't anymore. I'm just worried about the ones who do and want to be around me. And if you don't want to be around me, I am certainly fine with that too. But kayfabe is still an art within itself. I cut promos every day. Yeah, but kayfabe made wrestling fun. But I cut
Yeah.
promos every day, and I tell our classes every time in the next 4 hours, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same way I teach every class. I'm going to tell you stories. I'm going to scream. I might yell. And I might say some things that are completely not even relevant or worthy of what we're doing at the time. But maybe 2 weeks down the road, you might get the picture. And if you don't, that's okay too. Because not everybody's meant for this, and I'm coming from a different place and a different platform. I'm a coach, and I'm trying to get you to understand what wrestling was and why the basics and foundation is so important. You don't have to do it always my way, but you have to have some kind of semblance of what we're doing as far as locking up and doing the simple stuff. You can have your flair on it, your taste on it, your feel for it, but the fundamentals remain the same. An arm bar is still an arm bar. How you do it, the body language you put on it, and the torques and things like that. That's what separates you from the other guys. And kayfabe was so cool when the other guy knew how to sell right, and you know how to apply it right and sell as well. So anyway, and a great example of that is Superstar Billy Graham versus Dusty Rhodes in the Garden, where he wins the match on the count out, and Cody Rhodes is talking about.
Yep.
We watched that this week. That's a great example of less is more and getting the most out of that crowd in the Garden. I mean, oh my God, they had them eating out of the palm of their hands. So, and it was, while everybody in there probably felt something may have been, a little shady in the outcome and things like that. They didn't care. the fact that these guys went out and approached it as a big fight, a title fight, and they went in the ring, with the robe and the superstar with the tie-dye and the championship and all these elements. That was kayfabe, but it was in the magic theatrical part of show business. And so anyway, kayfabe is long missed.
Bob saw him wrestle in Scranton, PA. That's awesome. Nice.
Yeah, man. During that time, those guys were going up and down the coast and having a great, having entertaining matches, drawing money with that.
Did you hear about Abdul the Butcher? I know he's in his 80s now. He's not doing too good.
No, yeah, I did read that, man. That was a shame too, because this guy was wearing the finest suits, smoking the finest cigars, and yeah, at one time he was one of the biggest stars in the world and overseas, and had a huge name in the business. And I remember hearing stories about guys like him when I was growing up, and a guy named Whiskers Savage, who was one of the biggest box office draws in Houston in the 40s. Now, let me get this straight. 1940s and 50s, he was the first big breakout box office draw, and would come to Houston with his pig and promote the town outside the Coliseum and walk downtown barefoot and do these things to draw people in. And I hear these stories. I'm thinking, oh my God, who in the hell would ever come watch that guy? And then I got to see my heroes like the Valentines, the Wahoos, the Malenkos. And then that passed, and I thought, oh my God, these guys were great. And then I'm trying to explain to the kids now, a Johnny Valentine or a Wahoo McDaniel or Bull Curry, who at 65 years old was an old man but still wants to go out there and fight like he's a young man. No, man, it's the world keeps changing, and our likes, our wants, and desires in entertainment change too. So we didn't have a laptop when I was growing up in the 70s. We didn't have the video games or any of the cool stuff you have now. But we had some really good entertainers, some really good live action. And for me, anyway, and for that time period, it worked. This is a different time period. You got a lot to contend with. And WWE, being a multi-billion-dollar company, they're not worried about the quality of matches so much as they're worried about revenue. So I can't argue with them when they're making tons of money. It's a business, cold-hearted business.
Was New Jack ever stiff with you in the ring, or did he keep it professional?
No, New Jack was solid. He kept it professional. He was a guy he was another maligned talent who people would hear about his reputation and wouldn't want to mess with him. Right, wrong, or indifferent. But he kept it professional, man, especially in Smoky Mountain. He was solid. He was one of those guys. He didn't have to tell us everything he was going to do next. We were at that point where you knew when you were in the ring with these guys, especially New Jack and D'Lo and Mustafa, that you better be ready for anything. And he would come running at you. I'll never forget. I never forget. I believe it was in Johnson City. We were on the outside. I was on the outside, and I just nailed D'Lo just in time to see New Jack coming off the apron, jumping down with a flying clothesline to me on the floor. Wasn't stiff. It was solid. Didn't get hurt. He said, "Are you okay?" Just as we would, hey, just took the, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, man, I'm good." So he was always a pro. I enjoy it. And he was great. He was entertaining. He got it. And I think he got stiff with guys who had no respect and disrespected him, either inadvertently or directly, because he wasn't going to stand for that. But if you had a respect, you give respect, you'll get respect. Then, you earn it. And that was the way he looked at it, man. Just be straight up with him and be straight up with you.
This is a funny one from KWAB. I don't know what I know what he's talking about. I don't know why he's asking you, but thoughts on Kevin Nash getting bum rushed in the summer of 1992? There was some rumor years ago that he supposedly was like raped or something, but he came
What?
out and he said that if that were the case, the person that did it would be, he'd be in jail for manslaughter. He would have killed the guy. So I just
Yeah,
think that that's kind of a weird one. Like Nash,
I've never heard that, but I have no comment because I've never heard that. Has that
and
been
he
around for a while? Holy shit!
couple of years. Yeah, I think it was 2019 that came out. Something like it was like 3 or 4 years ago. The story came out. Then I guess another little Nash joke here. But is Nash as strong as legends tell? He can handle a big load and lift weights too. So a
Funny.
little
Yeah,
comedian there.
sure. Yeah,
But
very
according to Kevin Sullivan, Nash is the strongest guy he's ever met. So
funny. No doubt. I mean, no doubt. It's yeah, makes sense to me.
Bo, it says you trained an ungodly amount of world champions. Who's your top three of best students you've ever had of all time?
I don't, man. I don't even know if I can name a top three, but obviously, my gosh, Rock went on to ungodly heights. So, but as far as top three, I think everybody has accomplished what they came to accomplish and what they were supposed to. I mean, that's how I have to look at it. You did what you were supposed to do. Otherwise, it would have happened differently.
I would say The Rock, Kurt Angle, top
Yeah.
two. Maybe Shane McMahon, number three, maybe. Or you want to throw in a
World
tie
champion.
Brackus, Giant
Shane wasn't world
Silva.
champion, was he?
No. But I'm just saying top three. Got it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shane. Sure. Yeah, Shane was a good student. Kurt Angle was great. Rock, but see, Rock really doesn't count because he grew up watching all these incredible stars,
Good to
incredible
have on the
matches.
resume, though. Good to have on the
Yeah,
resume.
I agree. No, I'm not. I'm going to take all I can, no doubt. But yeah, man, Rock, Kurt Angle, Shane. Yeah, I'll go with those three. That's not bad.
Serious question, though, even though he was joking on the Nash one. What are
Right.
your thoughts on David Benoit, Chris Benoit's son, getting into the business? He's training with the Hearts.
Well, I feel horrible for the guy. I really do. I feel terrible for David uh because but I think if he has a passion for it and he wants to follow his dreams, he has every right to do it just like everybody else. And um I hope he does if that's what he really wants to do. Those are my thoughts. I hope if this is what he really wants to do and he has a dream to do it and passion for it, um, then why? Why not? Why crucify him because of the acts of someone else? There's no reason for that. But in society today, you're going to hear all kinds of reasons for all kinds of incredible stupid
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah.
I think if David
Unfortunately.
wants to do it, he should be able to do it. I really do.
Yep. Good question here. He's only 30, but he loves to study the game, student of the game. I enjoy watching Nick Bockwinkel, who I find is very underrated personally. What are your thoughts on Nick Bockwinkel?
I thought Nick was the world champion in AWA because he didn't want to be the NWA champion. They offered him the NWA title, from what I hear, but Nick Bockwinkel owned part of Houston, and he was always very nice to me. A nice guy, very nice man, but he was that guy that could work with anybody and make a match out of it. He worked with Ricky Morton in Houston one time. Hell of a match when Ricky was very young, but he led Ricky along the way, and Ricky followed and kept up his side of the match too. But I thought Nick was outstanding. He should have been. I would have loved, I think, to see Nick as a NWA champion. I saw him as the AWA champion, defending the belt, and I'm sure he would have found a way to work with everybody as he did in Minnesota. But I think being the NWA champion might have added another level to him. And I think he and Lawler, when they worked in Memphis, had some great matches and some great stipulations, getting fined for throwing a punch, $500 a punch, or whatever it was, some kind of crazy amount. And they just, they had a hell of a match each time they went out. So,
Yep. Bockwinkel and Heenan were great together. I agree.
I did. Yeah, I agree too. Fantastic.
Good question here. Speaking of Houston, I guess we'll just wrap it up here. This will be the final question. But
Okay.
how come Houston and World Class didn't have more of, an alignment, or they didn't really work together? No participation really between Houston and the Dallas office. World Class was so hot at one point, and obviously Houston was making mad money. But what's going on? How come they never teamed up?
Morris Siegel, well, they actually did team up. They
Oh.
were getting their talent from booking in the 60s, 70s. But Morris Siegel had the booking office in Texas when he was promoter, and Paul Bosch was Morris's assistant. After he got in a car wreck, was unable to wrestle again, he worked for Morris in the office. And when Morris Siegel passed away, Fritz just took the booking office to Dallas, from my understanding. And there was, again, this is just hearsay on my part because I don't know for a fact, but apparently there was a rift between the Dallas office and Houston because once Morris Siegel passed away, instead of having the booking office located in Houston where you get a piece of every town, Fritz just pretty much more or less took it and said, we're now booking out of Dallas. And if you guys want to work for me, great. If you want to work for him, you're not working these other towns. So that was, I think, one of the reasons. Then when when the kids were old enough to work, Paul, I think, didn't want to book them for fear of having Fritz come in and have the boys over and take over. That's just speculation on my part. But for a while there, it was Houston relying on the Dallas booking office, and then eventually went to Southwest, and then Bill Watts and WWF, and that was it. So,
Just a final little kind of a comment here, but he was looking at some of your matches. You look like a golden god. Your hair was awesome and kind of a ladies' man. He's saying maybe the golden coif, if you will, the golden god hair.
Listen, let me tell you this. I did okay. I did just fine. So it was a lot of fun. I wish it was like that again these days. I'm not saying just for all the debauchery, but I'm saying because the energy, the fun, the whole thing was different. The whole presentation was different, man. We had a blast.
Thank you, Bob. And he says, thank you for the great insight. Thank you, Bob. But let's talk about your book, A Pro Wrestling Curriculum, Advice, Suggestions, and Stories to Help the Aspiring Pro get to the next level. Dr. Tom, where can they get this awesome book?
They can get that awesome book at jpwrestlingacademy.com. We just started a new 12-week class last week. We're on week 2 starting tomorrow. We're recording on a Sunday. I tell everybody, John.
Yeah.
But we have everything going for 12 weeks. You can get that book at the website, jpwrestlingacademy.com.
I know a couple schools, by the way, that use this book as their curriculum. There's one in New Jersey that you know very well, and one in Florida, the Wrestling Lab, Creative Pro New Jersey, and Wrestle Lab down in Florida.
Yeah. We have a curriculum also being used in Malaysia. They sent out the word out and says, man, we use your book as our curriculum. Yes.
Damn.
Yeah,
awesome.
True story.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Tony says great insight as well, but also want to mention you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website tmptempire.com. Follow Dr. Tom on Twitter at Dr. Tom Prichard. Dr. Tom also on Pro Wrestling Tees, ProWrestlingTees.com, and so is the great JPWA. They're on Pro Wrestling Tees as well. What else are you up to? Anything else you got going on?
Well, I'm going to wait till we get closer, man. But that May 21st and May 22nd shots, both those shots, oh man, we got some cool stuff coming out of there. You I think alone will be amazed, shocked, bewildered, and impressed, all in one.
Nice, awesome.
And if you're not, then you're just not. You don't have a pulse.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for all the great questions tonight. Great stuff. Again, they never disappoint you. Great questions. But thank you, Dr. Tom. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you right back here next week for a little Taking to School with Dr. Tom Prichard.